Gridiron Grinder! Hut hut hike!
All right, it's Wednesday night, Gridiron Grinder time. I'm Ryan. With me, as always, is my buddy James. Just a couple of dudes hanging out, talking about what's going on in the NFL each week. This is episode 114. And so for tonight, we're going to kick things off with Name That Stadium. Then we're going to hit our recap of the news from this past week. After that, we'll jump into our week four power rankings and game picks. And then lastly, we'll close it off with our question of the week. And so, you know, uh, before I ask you how it's going tonight, James, I had a couple comments I wanted to add at the start of the show here. And it's just for people who are familiar with us. Thanks for coming back. We appreciate the support. If you're new to the show, quick housekeeping item is that these shows can get lengthy. We run somewhere in the hour and a half to 2 hour range every week. And so, to kind of help with people wanting to skip around, we bookmark the show in the description so you can just jump straight to the power rankings or straight to the game picks or whatever you're here for. And so, just trying to respect your time and have you get the most enjoyment out of this. And then also, if you haven't already, hit us up with that subscribe button, thumbs up, some comments, whatever. We want to hear from you guys. And with this last week in particular, I would like to welcome Manny Palmer to the show. He was one of our new subscribers that didn't want to subscribe anonymously. So, giving you a quick shout out, man. Thanks for joining us. And so, yeah, with all that being said, how's it going tonight, James?
It's going good. How's it going with you?
It's going good, man. It's going good. We did the promo video last week, as you know, and we condensed an hour and a half video into about 2.5 minutes, and we got like 10 times the amount of views that we normally get. And so, that's kind of like the secret sauce for YouTube is that you want to keep it short and sweet. People want to just kind of get in, get their info, and get out. And so maybe we'll find creative ways to like do some more chunk type things like that in the future. But it was fun to try and fun to see the results. But we've got a good thing going with our show, and so I'm happy with that. Why don't we kick it over to Name That Stadium, man?
All right. So near that stadium, for those that don't know and those that do know, is I kind of travel around during the regular season or during the season. It's generally a home game that week, but I pick a stadium. I go to that stadium, and the first person to put in the comments where I am correctly guess where I am in the comments will get a special shout out in the following week's show. I don't think we've had any takers in a while for Name That Stadium, but we'll see if some of these new subscribers decide
Yeah,
to venture a guess.
maybe they want to get in
We'll
on the
see.
action.
Um, True. Last week I was at Miami last week for the Bills Miami game, which I talked about during the show a little bit that I thought it was a really good game, could go either way. I was kind of surprised at how it ended up. I thought Miami could win. I thought Buffalo ultimately would win, but it felt like there was specific like that specific event of was it McKenzie that didn't go out of bounds on that last play and they didn't have time to spike it.
Oh, um,
I think it was
yeah,
Isaiah McKenzie.
yeah. I think it was. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that was man, just a bad time to make that kind of a mental error.
Yeah, and then Dorsey like destroyed a bunch of his tablet and
Oh, he
the
totally lost his shit, man. And they
yeah.
showed a good amount of it too.
Uh-huh. So I mean, I don't blame him. It's not as bad as some other fuck ups of the week, shall we say? Like I don't know, love Dan Campbell as a coach, and you go for it, you go for it on fourth down, and then when it comes fucking down to it, after kickers have already missed a
Yeah.
couple 50 plus yard field goals in that direction at that stadium, you decide to kick the fucking field goal instead of go for it on 4th and 1. And I think I sent you the stats, like
Yeah.
the win percentage, if if you go for it and make it, it was like the win percentage, like our projected win percentage was like at or near 100%, and it was like a 56% chance at going for it and making it versus like a 60% chance of making the field goal. And analytically, you should have gone for it, and that time he chose not to go for it. And
Yeah,
a
he's just
couple of
like zigging when he should be zagging. And,
yeah,
he's just like intentionally going against all the rules or whatever. But, it's tough because I think when you go for it that many times, it's now expected. And, they're seeing a lot of the ways that you try to go for it. And so it's
mhm,
like, it runs out of that surprise element a little bit. And so I could see where at some point you got to change the game plan. It just, I don't know. The timing was suspect, and it's one of these things where if it worked, nobody would have said anything. But it's
mhm.
because it didn't work that everybody's going to put him on the hot seat and be like, "What the hell, man?"
Yeah, and it's frustrating. And then I saw this week that our kicker hit the injury list.
Oh, I didn't see that. Cyber?
Seaver, Cyber, yeah, I just saw it. Like I had a busy day at work, but I saw something about it. Let me see if I can pull pull it
Yeah,
up
you
real
pull that up, man. And while you're looking that up, I just want to let everybody know if you're interested in Name That Stadium. We have had guys guess and get it wrong in the past. I will still respond to you in the comments and let you know you got it wrong, but that we appreciate you playing. But if you want to play, hit us up. And what I would suggest is not only name that stadium, but make a suggestion for what kind of swag you might want if and when we get that swag. Because, James, I got a feeling it's coming. It's just a matter of time. I mean, we've been rocking this shit out for over 2 years now.
yeah, that's why is it like nothing's coming up on it? Like he's questionable. Like it's clearly
Okay,
but uh groin injury.
gotcha.
Uh
It's pretty important for a kicker.
yeah.
Uh, Pretty much any football player. I don't know what position you could get away with a groin injury in the NFL.
Yeah. So there's some speculation that even in the game on Sunday he was dealing with a groin injury and it's like, oh, it's even worse.
I gotcha. All right. Well, hey, man, are you all set there with Name That Stadium? We can move it on.
Yeah, sorry, I got a little ramble there with
No, it's all good, man. There's nothing wrong with
coaching
going on a
decisions.
tangent. All right. So, yeah, let's do our recap of the past week. And so, sticking with kind of the way we've done this the last few weeks here, James, why don't we start off with just some of the surprises from this last week's slate of games? And we could go in a lot of different directions. You just talked about Miami getting the win over Buffalo. I think probably the one that a lot of people were shocked about just because of the way it happened. But you can look into it and sort of relate to all the injuries. Oh my gosh! But was Jacksonville just like putting the frickin' screws to the
Mhm.
Chargers, man? I mean, that was it was impressive. Jacksonville, we've said it now for a couple weeks in a row. They're a different football team this year, different coaching staff. Trevor Lawrence has a real coach developing him, and it's working, man. They're playing good on both sides of the ball. And then the Chargers, man, the snake bitten team of the last like frickin' 10 plus years,
No, not
everybody and their
like
mom
go
has
back.
gotten hurt.
Yeah. I Okay. So first of all, I'd like to congratulate Doug Peterson for tying Urban Meyer on the as having the fifth most wins of a head coach in Jacksonville Jaguars history. Um, that's a little knock at Urban Meyer's
Yeah.
coach tenure at Jacksonville. So I had issues with the Chargers and how they played that game, especially Staley leaving Herbert in there.
Yeah.
The game clearly got away from the Chargers. They should have pulled them. And Staley's comment was, "Oh well, he wanted to be in there." I heard Phil Simms earlier this week talking about it, and basically what Phil Simms said was, if you ask a player if he wants to be in the game, no player is going to say no.
And if they do, then you got a problem with that player more than likely.
Exactly. Exactly. So he's going to want to be in there, and it's getting away from you. And that, with his injury, every hit he takes, every throw he makes, every snap he takes, kind of delays the recovery from his injury. So you
Yeah,
pull
or
him,
even aggravates it even more. Yeah.
yeah, you sit him on the bench. It's obviously not your day, and you put the backup in there and move on. It's
Well, we talked about it last week in the show that it was like, hey, if there's a week that you would do this,
hmm
this is the week to do it because it's kind of like, you saw some, like, yeah, Jacksonville looked good to start the year, but it's still Jacksonville, and maybe this is a good time to rest some guys because they had a lot of injuries going into last week aside from Herbert.
uh-huh.
They had a guy out on the offensive line. They had, one of their wide receivers was supposed to be out. It just, and then on defense, they had some guys in the secondary that didn't look like they were playing. It's like, all these things, it was just like, hey, don't drag this on any longer than it has to happen. If you got to take a loss on the chin to get people healthy, just do it because, man, now, Bosa's out for at least a month. Slater's out for the year.
hmm
Ah, man, Jalen Guyton, their one wide receiver, he's out for the year. I mean, it's like, it sucks bad for this team, dude. It really
Yeah.
does. It's week
Yeah.
week 4 now, and it looks like playoffs are already slipping away for them.
I agree with you. I'm really surprised on it's just really surprising to me that they, like you said, they're just snake bitten. And you said decade. It's been like 20 years,
Yeah, it's been a long
30
time.
years, 40 years that it's
It
been.
it was
Like
it was
remember a couple one of New England's Super Bowl years, the Chargers had a way better team than New England, but Philip Rivers had, like, I forget what his injury was. Like, he had like a leg injury,
yeah.
and he went out there and like hobbled on one leg and tried to play the game. And I mean, he did pretty good. Like, he kept it close, but I mean, it's just with he got injured the week before, and he got the leg injury the week before, and that prevented them from going to the Super Bowl then. Or you go to the early 2000s with when they played in the Super Bowl, uh, early 90s. It was Bobby Ross. Bobby Ross. Yeah, Bobby Ross was the coach at the time. It was like 95, I want to say. 94, 95, somewhere around there. Where, because I remember like 2 years later, Bobby Ross was the Lions coach.
Okay.
And, but it was like they made it to the Super Bowl, and they just didn't, they perform, from what I remember, and I was like 14, 15 at the time, so who knows if my memory is correct. But they played way differently. They looked way worse in the Super Bowl than they did
Yeah.
previous.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, it's been more than a decade because it was like Philip Rivers' entire career,
Yeah.
and he was there a long time, and it was a bummer because he was a guy that was in that wave of, oh my gosh, here we go, people are throwing for 4,000 yards,
hmm
and he did it year in and year out, and it was like, okay, great, but they could never get a team around him, and then when they did get a team around him, guys just got freaking hurt all the time, and
Yeah.
it never happened for him.
Yeah. And like, but like, it's also like the the organization, because in the it was either late in the Drew Brees time or early in the Philip Rivers time. I don't remember who the GM, I don't remember who the coach was, but stories I hear about that time, in when they were in San Diego, was the GM and the coach couldn't hated each other so much
Mm,
that they couldn't even ride in an elevator together.
yeah, that's not good.
And
You
the
don't have to
GM,
like each other, but you got to be able to work well together.
yeah, and the GM ended up winning out. I forget who the coach was. It was like, it wasn't North Turner, but it was.
Yeah, before then.
No, it was like, I think it was right after North
Oh, okay.
Turner was there. I don't I don't remember who it was. I do know if I said the coach, and I don't remember, but I remember when it's like, oh, I remember him coaching there,
Okay. All right.
type thing.
Um, well, all right. So, one of the other big surprises, which we kind of called last week, that it could be sort of a trap or a look ahead game, was Indy getting the win over Kansas City. And, I didn't watch that game. I just got to watch the highlights and I got to read about it.
Mhm.
It from what I could gather, it looked like Indy kind of just fell into that win, and things just kind of happened for them at the right time, and they ended up getting it. And so, um, kind of surprising with how dominant Kansas City was the first 2 weeks of the season, but. I think Indy was also getting pretty desperate, and hey, a win's a win. Hopefully, this kind of gets them back on track because they are one of the more talented rosters. They just haven't been gelling yet this year.
Yeah, I just don't know what to make of Indy.
Yeah.
Like I coming into the season, I was down on the Chiefs, and it kind of showed in that game against Indy why I was down on the Chiefs. But I don't know. I just don't know if that game was Indy or if it was just the Chiefs playing bad. So I don't know what to make of them. Indy's not played good at at all this season. I mean, they might as well be 1-2 because tying Houston is a loss.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, I'm with you. So what other games do you think had that surprise factor, James, that you want to hit on before we get to the rest of the news?
It's a little bit different. It's just the 49ers and the Broncos.
Oh, that was
Man,
such an ugly game.
that was such an ugly, such a terrible game. I mean, 11-10, but props to Dan Orlovsky. He's no longer the only quarterback to inadvertently run out the end zone, run out the back of
I
the end
I
zone.
was I was saving my comment for later, but thank you. Yes. Uh, yeah, that game
Props to
was
him.
yeah, and I think the 49ers will be fine. They just need Jimmy G to shake off the rust because
Yeah,
he's not had a lot of time with the starters, and that's okay. He'll get there, but even like Denver, it was just like, oh my gosh, man. And they even talked about it in the game where it's like, you got to let Russell Wilson work his magic. You got to let him get out of the pocket and make plays. And it's like to this point, they've been trying to keep him in the pocket. They've been trying to kind of force things that just aren't happening. And their offense has done like almost nothing. And it was like finally at the end of the game, he started scrambling around a little bit and got him in a position to win. But it's like that was it was a hard game to watch. And I like defensive games, but that wasn't as much about great defense as it was just like totally
mhm.
inept offense.
Yeah, and I my takeaway from the game was I don't know if Hackett can coach.
Yeah, I'm worried about that too, man. I mean, I had him as my lowest rated coach in the model. And I told
Yeah.
you that until I saw something out of him, I had to keep it down there. And it's like, holy cow, it just like every week gets worse and worse for him.
Yeah, and I hate to say it, but I think his success that he had in Green Bay. Well, first of all, he was hired because of Aaron Rodgers, and it was a ploy to get Aaron Rodgers, and that didn't work. And they're going to let him play. They'll let him coach, and he'll probably be fired by the end of the year. The way things are going, it's just bad. I thought Denver. I thought they were going to be a fringe playoff team, probably not make it. Like I think I had them at like 9 or 10 wins, just missing the playoffs, and because yeah, we've talked about it. That defense isn't what it was, but with Russ, you can't count them out, and
Yeah.
they're not letting Russ cook. Like, like the analogy is Nathaniel Hackett is the health inspector shutting down the kitchen.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's bad.
Oh,
I mean,
man. It's the
we knew,
opposite of what you were supposed to be.
yeah, and we knew it was bad after the Seattle game, but then I don't know what to make of San Francisco from that game either. It's like
Yep.
that was bad too. Yeah, they and unfortunately they lost. Was it that game they lost Williams?
Yep.
So and I think Williams is out for the season too.
Oh shit, I didn't hear that. I thought he was going to be out for a little while, but yeah,
I
we'll have to
want to
double
say
check it.
I want to say that like he tore or separated a muscle from the bone.
Oh man, that doesn't sound good.
Yeah, I'll check it real quick, but that's what I thought I read.
Yeah, look it up. And, while you're looking it up, James, I want to throw out some love to some of the Central Michigan guys in the NFL. And, I'm just going to start off by saying we knew Luke Goedeke with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They had injury riddled offensive line going into the season, and he got an opportunity to start pretty much out of the gate as their left guard. He's made good on that golden opportunity protecting old man Tom Brady, man. He's been pretty solid so far this year, but we've talked about him. The other guy we talked a little bit about last week, I want to give him some props, is Cooper Rush, the backup quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. With Dak being out, he got the start. And so he had a start last year, and now he's got two starts this year. He's won all three. I think you were telling me he's the third quarterback in Dallas history to win their first three
Second.
starts. Not flashy by any means, but then again, CeeDee Lamb did drop a would-be touchdown in that game against the Giants. Either way, man, I told you last week, I like the way he throws the ball. I think he's got great composure, and he puts a lot of air under it, man, which greatly benefits the wide receiver. And so, I'm not in any hurry for them to get Dak back. I like seeing him play, and he's doing good for himself. The last guy I wanted to mention is tight end Tyler Conklin for the New York Jets. James, man, don't look now, but this guy is the number seventh ranked tight end in fantasy football for standard scoring leagues. Currently beating out guys like TJ Hawkinson and Kyle Pitts. All I can say is way to go to that guy, man. And we saw it in Minnesota last year. He was coming on. They had some injuries the year before, back when Kyle Rudolph was there, kind of opened up the door at the end of that season. And then last year, it kind of continued. He was getting like 4 or 5 catches a game for a period of time. I was kind of nervous about him going to the Jets, but CJ Uzoma has been out, and it's opened up that opportunity again. He's making good on it. So all three of these guys, fire up chips, man. That's all I can say.
Yeah, so I got the tackles confused. Sam Williams has a high right ankle sprain. He's out 4 to 6 weeks. It was Rashawn Slater that tore his bicep muscle.
Yeah, he's out for the year for sure, man.
Yeah, he's out for the year. It was, and I want to say he separated his his oh he tore his bicep tendon,
Okay,
not the muscle.
gotcha.
That's even worse, in my opinion. But yeah, and he's out for the year. So I just got the left tackles confused.
Man, yeah, that's not a fun experience. I tore the common tendon in my forearm, around the elbow. I was telling you a couple of years ago,
Hmm.
and that was a crappy year, man. That was a really crappy year. It was hard to do anything with that arm until it got better. Um, yeah, and this was torn playing football. I'm sure way worse.
Yeah.
Well, so James, let's talk about this one. It's kind of interesting. Miles Garrett was involved in a car accident the other day. Uh, Single car accident is what I heard. There was no
Hmm.
other vehicle involved. I don't know what exactly happened.
So
If
I so for what happened was apparently he was driving his Porsche and there was an animal in the roadway and apparently the roadway was wet and he swerved to avoid the animal and he overcorrected.
Okay.
And when he overcorrected, I think I read he rolled his car
Oh my gosh. So,
with
James,
the overcorrection.
was there an animal in the road, or was there an animal in the road? I
I
mean,
don't.
we'll never know. We'll never know.
We'll
I'm
never
just
know.
no, hey, I hope, you know, I heard he's got a shoulder strain and a bicep strain.
Yeah,
I'm just glad that, you know, there wasn't anything more serious. You know, when I heard about it, there weren't many details, and I couldn't help but go to negative town of, he was probably fucking around in his car and, you know, ended up going a little too far. But, you know,
yeah,
uh, you know, hey, if there was really an animal there, that's okay. He was trying to protect some creature's life, and so that's admirable. And you know, hopefully everything's okay here.
yeah. And the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. But there was a also there he had a passenger in his car too.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know who or anything about it, but um, so yeah. I mean, the good news, he's okay. That's all that matters. He's questionable. He's either day to day or questionable. He didn't practice.
Yeah, the last I saw it was a day-to-day thing.
He hasn't been ruled out. So yeah, it's day to day. So we'll see what happened.
All right. Well, hey, let me bring you back to that Dallas New York Giants game for a minute because trade rumors started circulating last week with regards to Kenny Galladay,
Hmm.
old Lions wide receiver, and you know he's upset that he's not getting more targets and that he's not on the field more. And then, of course, at the end of that game, he dropped, you know, basically a would-be touchdown for the Giants. After the game, said he regretted not making that play. Obviously, I mean, you know, nobody wants to drop a pass. I mean, it just, you know, and it sucks when it happens. It just for him in particular, it sucks more because he's been expressing frustration and then he didn't come up when they needed him, and so it's tough, man. And honestly, I don't know what to make about it because with how little he's performed with the Giants last year and now to start this year, I'm just not sure that he really even has any trade value, man.
Well, yeah, I would agree with you, especially. Well, first of all, I don't think the Giants are going to trade him because becoming pretty anemic at the wide receiver position. With they lost Sterling Shepard for the season.
Oh, I
Uh,
did see that.
one
Yeah.
Wendell Robinson trying to come back from a hamstring injury. Kadarius Toney's trying to come back from a hamstring injury. So there's should be the opportunities for him to perform. I just don't think that he's there. Like there, I thought he outperformed his abilities when he was with Detroit,
Yeah.
and I think you have a lesser quarterback in Daniel Jones, and Daniel Jones. I mean, Daniel Jones sucks at American football. I tell you right now, the Giants could cut Daniel Jones today, and no team would claim him to be a starting quarterback. The end of the season when they don't re-sign him, no team's going to sign him for the starting job.
Yeah, he'll go somewhere as a backup, and maybe one day he'll get a chance to try it again. But um, I'm with you. I don't see him. No, nobody's picking up the phone saying, "Hey, you know,
Mhm.
if he doesn't work out, let us know."
Yeah, so I think that's part of the problem. Where when he was with Detroit, he had Stafford, and I know you don't like Stafford. I think
James, it's a
Stafford
love-hate
is
thing, man. You know, that's all it
yeah,
is.
I know. But I think the talent is there, and he's. I would put Stafford. I wouldn't put Stafford top five, probably top 10 quarterbacks in the league. He is going into this year. This
Sure.
year showed something different. And but especially when Stafford was at Detroit, I would have put him even higher than that, possibly edging up closer to the top five. Not quite in the top five, but he has arm talent that Daniel Jones doesn't have. He has the ability to put the ball in spots that Daniel Jones doesn't have. I mean, heck, he has the ability not to fumble the ball that Daniel Jones doesn't have. Um, so I think Galladay was benefit had a lot benefited immensely from Stafford's ability.
Yeah, I get you. No, I mean it's that I'm sure is a factor. Um, and he's just not a good fit there. He could go somewhere else. Maybe he needs to go somewhere else, and he could be like a number three guy that's like maybe a possession red zone kind of target only,
Well,
and
see, but
it could
that's the thing.
maximize some of
The
his skill
rumors
set.
the rumors I'm reading is Tampa.
Well, because yeah, I mean they just have every wide receiver in the world go there and get hurt, so they got to
Yeah.
get more.
So I'm reading a lot of rumors with Tampa being involved in potential trading for Galladay. But I don't think the way Tom Brady's been performing this year, I don't think I'm hard pressed this year with their performances to put Tom Brady as a better quarterback than Daniel Jones. Just taking these games this year as a
I mean, I
whole.
I take Brady over Daniel Jones, no
Right.
doubt.
I
I just
I would
yeah,
too. I would too. But that's based on history. I'm just talking about the first three games this
yeah,
year. Daniel Jones has outperformed Brady, and
yeah. I
Brady
think yeah,
definitely.
I think it could be, you know, is Father Time finally catching him? It's hard to say because they've had a lot of injuries on the offensive line and at wide receiver, and so he's not really been in the normal position he's been in to succeed. And so far the defense has been bailing him out. The defense has been keeping him in games. Week one they ran great with Leonard Fournette, a little different last week, but um, you know that's what it has to be until guys come back healthy. Is that they're going to have to play strong defense and run the
Mhm.
ball well. Otherwise, Brady, he's not a mobile guy, man. I mean, if you can't protect him, it's just not going to happen.
Completely agree. Uh,
All right, well let me hit my last two things real quick. One of them is defensive back Xavier Rhodes has signed with the Buffalo Bills, coming in there, which is good. They lost uh, Micah Hyde. Holy cow, I'm like having a senior moment here. Out for the year. And so Rhodes, former Minnesota and Indianapolis defensive back, is going to come in. He's definitely long in the tooth at this stage of the game, but he's a savvy veteran guy. Should hopefully have a positive impact for the Bills because they need him. And, he was waiting for an opportunity. So,
yeah, and so the important thing there is Leslie Frazier. Leslie Frazier coached Rhodes when he was in Minnesota, so there's familiarity there. They did sign him to the practice squad and could be called or could be signed to the active roster um, this as early as this week, which I thought was interesting. But
yeah.
oh, I didn't see that. Sorry, something just caught my eye on something. But anyways, so he possibly could be on the active roster this week. I think it's a good fit. He has familiarity with I believe it's Frazier, Leslie Frazier,
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
and so there's that familiarity there, which could help him acclimate to their system fairly easily.
Yeah. And so then the last one I had, James, was Clay Matthews was in the news. Uh, Apparently he never officially retired from the NFL. And it sounds like he may not officially retire from the NFL, but he made a statement that he is saying his playing days are over, whether there's a formal retirement or not. He's done, which I mean, I kind of assumed at this point, but I guess you just never know. Anything can happen at any time. But it's been a while since we've heard his name get tossed around, and so it hit the news. I figured, what the heck, man? Let's let everybody know. We got some people probably older than us watching the show. They know a little bit about Clay Matthews.
I mean, well, shit, it's only been like what, 2 years. 2 years ago, he was on the Rams.
And not relevant.
Not relevant. Nah, a little bit relevant. A little bit.
I don't know. I mean, his he had like the quarterback's arm falling off the cliff with, the outside linebacker version of that, where
Yeah.
it just was like all of a sudden one day he just couldn't get the sacks anymore. So, but that's okay. I mean, it happens to all of us, man, in different ways. We all slow down, our bodies break down. I'm experiencing it right now, as I told you before the show. Freaking back's hurting me. you know, you can't you can't fight it, man. It just happens. So, all right, what am I missing here news wise, or is that good?
All right.
I mean, we
The first
covered a
one,
lot.
and like one, just two little things to look out for. The Chiefs Bucks game, depending on and hopefully everyone in Florida is safe. Depending on what happens with Hurricane Ian, however you pronounce that name, the Chiefs at Tampa Bay game might be relocated to Minnesota.
Yep, good call. I saw that.
Um, so that for picks wise, that might be something to take into consideration if it comes to that, because like we talked about this week, there's a possible minor fraction of a adjustment for home team versus road team, and also and it's not going to matter for the game because either way this team would probably lose. New England's quarterback Mac Jones has a high ankle sprain
Yep.
and is probably out for against the Packers. He's probably out for several weeks actually. And if he can't go, this is a name from the past, and he's not a starting quarterback in the NFL. Brian Hoyer will be the starter.
Hoyer, Michigan State. What's
Yeah,
up? I mean, hey, you talk about some staying power,
yeah,
for a guy that's been a career backup. Holy cow, dude. He he obviously knows how to hold that clipboard because, he's been hanging in there. And I don't say that like jokingly. I mean, that may be a little bit of a joke, but uh the guy, he obviously must be like super intelligent and
hmm
add a lot of value, because most of the times as a backup, if there's no higher ceiling, eventually you just get shut down because it's like, they want to know that, oh, maybe there's something in you that we haven't seen where you could potentially be a starter if we needed you. With Hoyer, it's like we've known for a freaking decade that the dude will never be a starter, but he still is hanging
uh
in there as a backup, man.
yeah. So I mean, it's a little bit interesting that he keeps holding on and keeps holding on, and I don't know, I don't understand why. I just honestly don't understand why. I thought when like he was drafted in like the 15th round, and when he was drafted, I was like, oh, he'll be gone in like 2 years. He's clearly doesn't have NFL talent, but hey, he
He's doing something right.
he's doing something right. So I'll give it to him.
All right, what else you got news wise?
That was it.
Okay. Well, let's switch it over here, James. Let's do our week 4 power rankings. I am going to pop up my spreadsheet here, and whenever you're ready, man, why don't you give me your 1 through 5?
All right. So I don't like this team at number one, but I couldn't really drop them. I and teams in front of them lost, and I I really got to sit down and go through and fix my power rankings because I hate this team at number one, and I probably should put
Yeah,
another team up
you might
there.
have to just make a hard adjustment, whether it's coming off a win or not.
Yeah, and that's the Rams. I mean, I hate it, but I don't think the teams that I have behind them are the number one team. I'm gonna have to actually spend some time um, before next week's show and just redo my entire rankings and not pay attention to whether they won or lost or where I had them the previous week because I don't. There's an adjustment coming here, but I have the Rams at number one. They're
Sure.
probably more like 5-6 area, if that. At number two, I have Green Bay. I think they were incredibly lucky to win that game. There was a mistake by Brady, letting the play clock run down on the 2 point conversion, and they didn't have any timeouts. But this is another one where, Green Bay's defense is starting to show what I thought they were coming into the season. And
Yeah.
with Aaron Rodgers, I think this might be right around the right range for them. At number two, maybe somewhere between 2 and 4 is where I think they are, and so they moved up one spot. And then there's Miami. I moved Miami up to number three. They were lucky, yes, but when it came down to it, Buffalo lost, and I had Buffalo at number one, and I already had Miami at number four.
Hmm.
So I could because Miami beat Buffalo, I couldn't rank Buffalo ahead of Miami,
Gotcha.
at least for 1 week. Miami survived the butt punt, um,
Yeah.
which was amazing, and I like the fact that Sanchez commented about it, like
Oh,
something
I
about
didn't
stay out
know
of my
that,
or
but
something
all
like
right.
that. Like on Twitter, he whoever the kicker was, I forget his name, forget the punter's name, but told him to stay out of his lane or some shit like that. I love that. I love that the Sanchez can joke about it, and it's no longer just the butt fumble. Now you have the butt punt.
Yeah.
Um, but Miami moved up one spot to number three. Buffalo, after that loss, moved down to number four, 3 spots. Like I, it was mismanagement. It was bad play calling. It was kind of a combination of events that caused Buffalo to win that game. I think like it was something ridiculous, like a 200-yard discrepancy um, in yards, and like I want to say this was the game, and don't quote me on this, but like I think Josh Allen had 45 more passing plays than Tua, or passing attempts.
They had, I know as an offense, they had way more plays offensively and
Yeah,
just a
and
different result.
it was like no single quarterback in the entire league this past week had more than 45 passing attempts. Something ridiculous like that,
Yeah.
and which is crazy. I think they they are way, and we've said this week year in and year out. They're way too reliant on the pass,
Yep.
and Josh Allen thinks they need to do something with that run game, and actually try to run the ball.
I think I'm just going to be honest. I think they got to get at least one premier offensive lineman, and then they could make
Hmm.
a more concerted effort running the ball. I think that's part of the problem is that they've had streaky success because that line is really not. I think Josh Allen makes up for a lot of their weakness. I guess is
Hmm.
the best way I can put it.
Yeah, but their inability to run the ball is something like the last. I want to say it's the last 2 years. It might be the last 3 years. The Buffalo has not won a game decided by a touchdown or less.
Yeah.
And that's where not being able to run the ball rears its ugly head
Yep.
because you can't finish those games off. Number five, I have Baltimore. If it weren't for if Josh Allen was in the league, I would say that Lamar Jackson right now is the hands down MVP favorite.
Okay.
I think I think it's kind of gonna come down probably between Allen and Lamar Jackson. Lamar 2 years ago when Lamar was unanimous MVP,
Yeah.
this year he has started out better than he did 2 years ago when he was unanimous MVP. If he can keep it going, he will end up being the MVP. Baltimore looks like a juggernaut with that offense rolling, and now that they have Dobbins back.
Yeah, it's really just a matter of can their defense do anything to help complement them?
Exactly. And so I moved Baltimore up one spot. But like Lamar Jackson, he leads the league. Yeah, he leads the league with 10 interceptions, 10 touchdowns. And I don't, if I remember correctly, I'm going to take a quick glance and I'll, I'll update in a second. But if I remember correctly, I don't think he's thrown an interception
Okay. Yeah,
this year,
geez, I
which
don't
is
know if he's,
crazy.
yeah, off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
Because I know Allen has two. Oh, I guess he's thrown two.
Okay.
It's just they're not sticking in my head.
Yeah. Um, all right. Well, I'll give you my 1 through 5 here, James, and I'll just kind of preface it by saying I thought this was a fun week in the power rankings. There was a lot of things that got shaken up, and I took full advantage of it and had some fun with it. And so I put Miami 3-0 at the number one spot, and so I moved them up
I
five
understand.
spots. I think these guys look legit on both sides of the ball. They don't have the injury concerns, knock on wood, like
They
some of these
do.
other
They
teams.
Xavier Howard
Oh, what
is
happened with
dealing with
him?
an injury, but that's it.
Okay. Um,
I know he was questionable going into this past week, and I want to say they have a whole shitload of injury concerns coming in this week. Like two is questionable.
yeah, and he's,
Um,
they're saying he's expected to play, but all right. Well, maybe I'm not, you know, totally on par here by saying less
Armstead's
injury concerns. Uh,
Armstead's out.
oh
Uh,
shit, I didn't see that.
hold on. No, 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 never mind. I don't like how the source did it. So it has
Okay.
so and so and so and so out, semicolon. Armstead is questionable with a toe injury. Xavier Howard's questionable with a groin glute injury. Brandon Jones is questionable with a chest injury. Tua is questionable with a back/ankle injury. Jalen Waddle is questionable with a groin injury. Raekwon Davis is questionable with a
All
knee
right.
injury,
So
and
yeah, they
Ced
got they
Wilson
got
is
they got
questionable
banged up. I got
with
you.
a toe injury.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, either way, I put him to one.
but I
I
hadn't
like it.
heard any of that. I,
Yeah.
I hadn't heard any of that until like I happened to see an article about it today.
No, and I haven't heard anything about it myself either. But either way, I like what they're doing both sides of the ball. I like their coach. I like how he has like gotten every ounce of potential out of Tua so far. And so I'm rolling with it, man. I'm putting them at one for now. They beat Buffalo. I thought it was impressive. At two, another fun move. I put Philly there. I moved them up 5 spots. I think they're in a lot of ways similar to Miami, where they just look really good on both sides of the ball, and especially on offense, man. They've got that electric, aspect to their offense, but defensively, still very stout. And so then at three, I got Buffalo. I dropped them down 2 spots. Um, you know, like you're saying, the lack of a running game is an issue. I think in that game it showed that uh, a few mistakes here or there can be the difference maker in the game. And Miami was able to get over theirs. Buffalo wasn't able to get over theirs. And so, um, and I was very close to reconsidering my pick when I saw that they had Ed Oliver was out, and another one of their starting defensive linemen was out for that game. I did start getting concerned. I stuck with it, and now I'm waiting to see what's going on with these guys because they've got some holes on defense, on the defensive line and in the secondary. It could be problematic for Buffalo, man. At four, I've got the Rams. I moved them up by 1 spot, and some of that was just because of the way the board sort of worked out. I was not really impressed by any means with them getting the win over Arizona. It wasn't a decisive win like it should have been. And, I didn't watch the game. Everything I read was this was more about Kyler Murray not being able to finish drives than it was anything about the
Because he didn't
Rams
do his
doing
homework.
anything positive. What's that?
He didn't watch film.
Yeah, he was playing video games or something. But uh, and this is something I struggle with, having the Rams in my top five, because they have been, we say it every week, they've been in absolute disarray this year. I mean, offensively, I can't believe a Sean McVay team looks this out of sorts. It just blows my
Mhm.
mind. But then at five, I've got Green Bay. I moved them up three spots. I feel like week one is way in the past at this point. But I am still keeping an eye on their offense, because they couldn't really get it going against Tampa Bay. And I'm not going to, like, you know, knock them too hard, like, oh, we're back to week one, because Tampa Bay's defense, I think, is at that higher level this year. And, um, but the big thing, like you mentioned, for Green Bay is their defense is coming to play, which we've been waiting for. And so I'm okay keeping them here for now. Back to you at six, man.
All right, at six, I have the Chargers. I moved them down one spot, but the thing with the Chargers, I want to see how they respond to the injuries, and I want to see another week. I think Jacksonville was just that confluence of events that went that went Jacksonville's way, and I think there's a possibility of that. I want to see before I move them down further. I want to see how they respond with the injuries they have. Seven, I have the Bengals. Yeah, they beat the Jets, but a lot of like there's some movement around them, and which caused them to go up two spots. And Tennessee's the same way. It's like I want to believe that Tennessee is a top 10 team. I really, really, really want to believe it.
They just look
But
so bad in
honestly,
weeks one and two.
exactly, they look terrible in weeks one and two. I don't know if Tannehill is gonna continue with his starting job, and it's going to go to Malik Willis. I think, and I think if they do go to Malik Willis, I think Malik Willis will give a little bit of that extra, that offense, to where they they need to get Henry going. They need to. I mean, they have some things to do, and I think on paper, I want to believe they're better than they are, and I'm struggling with them. Tampa Bay, Tampa Bay's offense looks terrible. I had flashbacks to the Thursday night Chicago Tampa Bay game a couple years last year or the year before, when Brady thought it was third down when it was really
Oh,
fourth down. And it's like
yeah.
Brady's not looking good. Father time has definitely caught up to him. I think he's too letting the outside stuff get into his mind more, and he's too distracted. Um, I I only moved him down two spots because it's kind of like I don't I'm trying not to do a huge drastic adjustment. Like I agree with you. Philly is probably a top five team, but I want to see them keep doing it. I keep thinking that
It is a
Philly
lot of a surprise for me to be putting them up to two, but
yeah,
I totally respect what you're saying. From where they've been to where they've come now, it's like, yeah, you got to take it with a grain of salt. And maybe I should be making them earn it for a few more weeks, but I hear what you mean, man.
yeah. And at 10 I have Kansas City. Philly was a side note because I think Philly's a probably top five, top 10 team, and I think Tampa Bay is. I'm sorry, I think Kansas City is, if it continues if I continue to see, even if they win, I might drop Kansas City again next week, because if they're just, first of all, they would have lost to Tampa Bay, and I I don't think Tampa Bay's offense stacks up at all to Kansas City, and that says a lot, because I don't think Kansas City's offense stacks up to the half the league.
Oh man, not holding any punches. Well, hey, let's just segue over. I've got Kansas City at six on my board. I dropped them four spots. Um, you know, we talked about it. I thought last week that it might be a look ahead game and it could be kind of a trap game for them. I don't know if that was necessarily the case, or whatever happened, but they couldn't beat a struggling Indianapolis team, and it's a concern. But I do think they looked really, really good in weeks one and two, and the defense was showing some signs of life as well. So I'm not gonna like throw the baby out with the bathwater just yet. I'm gonna keep them here and see what happens. The Tampa Bay game, it's hard to say what Tampa Bay team are we gonna get and how well can we use that as an evaluation. But that's okay. I got them at 6. It's 7. I got Baltimore. I moved them up 2 spots. I was tempted to move them ahead against Kansas City, but like at the end of the day, I thought, man, they just beat the Patriots, which just isn't that much of an opponent this year. And so, I thought, okay, let's wait and let's see how things happen after this week. At 8, I've got Cincinnati. I moved them up 2 spots. Um, with Cincinnati, I'm just hoping that the Jets game was like that little bit of a powder puff team that they needed to get back on track because we know the talent is there. And they played good on both sides of the ball in that game. We just need them to kind of keep that forward momentum now.
Hmm.
At 9, I've got Tampa Bay. I dropped them down 6 spots. And, yeah, I mean, hey, Brady almost got them to overtime, but they had that mental error at the end. And it just, they're clearly struggling on offense, and the defense wasn't able to bail them out. Um, it's tough, man. It's tough. This is, it's like everybody's going to point to Brady, and I'm sure I'll do it too. I am just trying hard, at least tonight, to go to his defense a little bit with all of the injuries because I think people are quick to forget. He's without like 3 or 4 of his starting offensive linemen. I mean, it's pretty wild. He's without like all of his starting wide receivers. I mean, it just it, it's a lot to ask of any quarterback, to be honest. But it's Brady, and so there's an expectation there. And as soon as you see, that little bit of crack in the armor, it's like everybody's like, ah, this is it, it's the end. And it very well might be. I just I haven't I haven't had a full puzzle to evaluate it yet because of all these injuries, I guess. And then at 10, James, I've got the Chargers. I dropped them down 6 spots also. I just decided to get ahead of it with this one. I feel like, especially with Bosa now, it's just so many injuries, man. And, I kind of did it like this with Dallas, and then I kind of paused because I wanted to see how they do with Cooper Rush. The difference here is that they have way more injuries, and Herbert, it's just, it's almost like the Brady thing a little bit. It's like you're asking too much of a guy when he now has his left tackle out for the year. I don't know if Lindsley's even coming back this week. I haven't seen what's going on with him. But, Keenan Allen was hurt. Maybe he's finally coming back. It's just, you know, it's tough, dude. It's tough.
Hmm.
And so this is just where I felt like I had to adjust them, man.
Yeah,
All right, back to you
I
at 11.
I respect that. I respect it making that adjustment. I almost did, and I decided to take a pause on it.
Yeah,
All right,
slow and
so
steady. I like it.
at 11, I have Philly. You're probably right. Philly is probably number two, number three. I I knew Philly was going to be pretty good. I didn't know they were going to start out the gate this good. And I'm trying to like I'm waiting for that drop off, and it's week after week it's not coming. So maybe I should move them up. 12, I have Dallas. This is kind of just correcting my overreaction to losing Dak. Cooper Rush is more than an adequate backup quarterback. Um, yeah, meh. I think the offense could play better. I just think, but I think that they're doing what they need to do, and the defense is stepping up. 13, I have New Orleans. They dropped 2 spots. I even forgot who they lost to this week. It was just bad.
Oh, they just lost to Carolina, man.
Yeah, actually, I predicted that game, but I predicted Carolina winning that game. Now that I think about it, but it's just bad. Jameis Winston is back on the injury report, and in fact, all week so far, Andy Dalton has been taking QB1 reps.
Oh
So
boy.
so that just chew on that. 14, I have Cleveland. They moved up 3 spots. I think I started off way too low on Cleveland because of Deshaun being gone for 11 games. I think Jacoby Brissett has shown some things where he can hold down the fort until Watson gets back, which I'm impressed with. 15, I have Minnesota. They moved up 3 spots. They beat Detroit. What this boiled down to was I had Detroit way too fucking high last week. Or no, I'll be fine with it. I had them way too fucking high last week, and I corrected it, and ends up with Minnesota moving up 3 spots. It was like a 1 or 2 spot jump, and then a couple teams ahead of them moved back, and it was a 1 spot jump, and a couple teams ahead of them moved back, and that's where Minnesota ended up at 15. I have high hopes for Minnesota. I think they can be good. I think they could be that sneaky team in the NFC. I have problems having faith in them.
Yeah. Well, and James, I've got Minnesota at 11, and I moved them up 1 spot for that win over Detroit, but I almost didn't bump them because they barely beat
Mm-hmm.
Detroit, and I just don't know what to make of this team. We've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, and they're just, I guess all I can say is they're on my watch list. I think having them at 11 is probably generous right now, but they did get the win, and I didn't want to lower them on a win. But yeah, it's kind of like you were talking about earlier. At some point, you just have to make that hard adjustment on the board, even if you're going against the grain, because um, you can see things that aren't reflected in the win loss
Mm-hmm.
columns. And so you just got to make changes off of that sometimes. At 12, I've got the Browns. I moved them up 1 spot. I thought it was a nice win over Pittsburgh because honestly, Pittsburgh fought hard in that game. And despite the box score, it was actually a really close game. There was just sort of like a fluke touchdown at the end. Uh, but it Cleveland was down in the first half, and they fought back. And honestly, man, I thought Pittsburgh really played as good as they could have in that game. It just didn't work out for them. And so I thought it was a quality win for Cleveland, even though we know Pittsburgh has a lot of issues this year. At 13, I got San Francisco. I dropped them down 2 spots. This is where I was going to plug in my Dan Orlovsky comment, but you already covered it with Jimmy G, and that's
I
that's
didn't
fine.
mean to. I didn't mean to cut it off. I was just excited about it.
Yeah, no, hey, I am too because now someone else can share that pain. And his wasn't as like blatant and bad as Orlovsky's, okay? But just the fact that it happened, we got to bring it up.
Uh,
But it's the serious thing here is that the guy's shaking off the rust. He didn't practice the entire off season because he was coming back
he
from
didn't
that.
even get the playbook till like 3 weeks ago.
It, exactly. That's all I'm getting at is, he's got to get back up to speed. And so I think the 49ers will be all right. So I didn't want to like crush them. I just moved them down 2. At 14, I've got the Cowboys. I moved them up 3 spots. You know, Cooper motherfucking Rush, man. That's really all I can say about it. He is keeping the ship afloat. And I mean, I'm throwing him all the love, but the defense is really keeping him in all these games. The
Hmm.
defense has been freaking lights out. Dan Quinn, he'll get another head coaching job at some point sooner than later because, man, he
He
is like a
shouldn't
freaking
though.
magician on the defense.
He shouldn't. His cap should be defensive coordinator. I mean, he's
I,
not a head coach.
I know, but because he's so good at defensive coordinator, he'll get another shot.
I'll give
And
you
then
that.
and then at 15, I've got the Colts. I moved them up 1 spot. Not a decisive win by any means, but it was still a win against a credible opponent. Hopefully, it gets them on track. but I didn't want to go crazy because weeks 1 and 2 were so god awful. I got to see them actually really be on track before I start getting them back up into that top 10 kind of range. So back to you at 16, man.
All right, at 16, I have Arizona. Arizona didn't move. It was a terrible loss. So you touched on it with Kyler and everything, but teams ahead of them, I corrected. So they kind of and they probably would have moved back like 1 or 2 spots, but they ended up staying the same because of this a correction on some other teams that I realized I had way overhyped. 17, this is the interesting one. I have Jacksonville, and until I saw your rankings, which we'll get to in a minute, I thought I was way overhyping that Jacksonville after that win, and your rankings kind of make me feel better. They moved up 2 spots. Look, it was an impressive win. Jacksonville is possibly the favorite to win their division
Yeah.
right now, which is weird to me, seeing as though how last year ended up and how the last couple of years have ended up with Jacksonville. But I would like I said, props to Doug Peterson. He tied Urban Meyer, fifth all-time wins for the Jaguars. It's solid. 18, and I have Indy. They moved up 2 spots. Yeah, the first couple of weeks were terrible, but I think they're kind of it's starting to come around, and they're starting to get in the groove, shall we say.
Yeah.
Probably my biggest correction on the board is 19 and 20, Detroit and Vegas. They both dropped down 6 spots. I overhyped Detroit last week. I got way excited about it, and I had to check myself. Vegas, what the
They're
thing
all
with
talk,
Vegas
man.
is they're all talk, but here's the thing: if you listen to Derek Carr and what he's saying about it's taking time to get used to Josh McDaniels' offense and blah 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 blah. Well, here if you what it boils down to is if you want to get used to the fucking offense, fucking play at least a quarter or play some plays in the fucking preseason. Don't sit your ass on the sideline because that's when you're
Yeah.
going to get used to it. Don't come into the season like, oh, I don't know the offense. Let me get used to it now. Yeah, fuck you.
Oh man, I like it. All right. So yeah, James, at 16, I got Jacksonville. Let's talk about them for a minute. I moved them up 6 spots. I feel really good about this team, and even in week 1, they played good. It just was like Washington just caught fire at the right times and got that win against them in
Mhm.
week 1. But they've played 3 steady weeks of football. Um, and I made a note here that maybe these guys should have been on our dark horse list because they're really kicking butt here, man. And, they're like, they're the opposite of some of the teams we had on the dark horse list,
Mhm.
good for them. It's 17. I got Denver. I moved them up 2 spots. You probably heard this or read this that they had 9 3-and-outs, first time in Russell Wilson's career. Not good, but the defense bailed them out. And they did see at the end of the game that when you let Russ get out of the pocket and work his magic, he can make it happen. Hopefully, they let him do more of that. At 18, I've got New Orleans. I dropped them down 4. And I have New Orleans competing with Las Vegas for possibly the most underwhelming team this year. The difference is that New Orleans has a win, Vegas does not. But it is one of the most talented rosters, and they just can't put anything together. I mean, they look really bad, man.
Mhm.
On both sides of the ball. I don't like it. At 19, I've got the Cardinals. I moved them down 4 spots, and it's tough. I was just talking about last week, Kyler Murray putting the team on his shoulders and making things happen. And now, a week later, they're like, Kyler can't close drives and that this team's got problems. And, of course, it's happening against a very inconsistent Rams team that I thought they could have gotten that win. But it just goes to show that, there's a lot of teams that are in disarray right now. And then at 20, I've got the Titans. I moved them up 8 spots, and I know I was like overly down on them, and I'm still not like sold on them by any means, but you know, they did have a very good first half of football. They ran the ball extremely well. They got out to a big lead in that game. They almost let the Raiders back in and win that game. And so I am still concerned with them. But I thought, okay, let's get them back into this range. Probably more appropriate in my mind. And, if they keep winning, they'll keep going up. But I just see so many holes on this team, offensively and defensively. So I'm just not really thrilled. But back to you at 21, man.
So I just realized as I was looking at my 21-22, I flipped the teams on what I sent you. So that 21, I have Denver. They stayed the same, and I, for some reason, I mean, Denver won the game. They beat San Francisco. I can't put San Francisco ahead of them.
Well, sure you can. They're your rankings.
I know, but I can't move San Francisco. I can't move San Francisco above Denver.
You could,
And
I
like
mean, yeah, you could make some twisted argument, and I would buy into it. But I hear what you're saying. In your mind, logically, it makes sense that Denver's above San Francisco.
yeah, at least for this week. San
Yeah.
Francisco probably will move up next week, depending on what happens. 22 San Francisco. I moved them up 3 spots after that win. It was more of a couple teams around them. I didn't like how they performed this week, even though San Francisco lost. I think they were right there with Denver. Some fluke plays caused them, or a fluke play caused them to lose that game.
Okay.
That's the only reason they lost. 23 Houston dropped down 1 spot. I wasn't that impressed with them this week. I don't know what it was. Um, I,
The the
I can't.
the rookies made a lot of mistakes, man.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't see much of the game. I watched some highlights on it, and I couldn't. Watching the highlights, I just couldn't place my finger on exactly what went wrong. 24, I have Washington. This is probably still too fucking high for Washington. The Commies are not a good football team. They're in disarray. Their defense didn't show up for the most part. They did get a safety. I don't fucking know how. Pissed me off because that safety caused me to lose my fantasy matchup. But
Oh,
that's another story.
that's fantasy. It's not reality.
No, I know it's not reality, but I don't
Unless
like.
you have money on the line, James.
I think Washington looks like they're in disarray. The offensive
Yeah.
line can't stop a fly.
Yeah, the offensive line is
They gave
really
up
bad.
they gave up 9 sacks to 4 players, and Carson Wentz. I don't know if Carson Wentz should be a starting quarterback. I'll leave it there.
Okay.
25. I have the Giants. I dropped them down 1 spot. The only thing that saved them from dropping down further is I thought they fought hard in this game. They have a lot of injuries. Galladay's unhappy, but the game, and people are arguing that the game would have been a further disparity if CeeDee Lamb hadn't dropped a touchdown pass.
Yeah.
That's the argument I've heard. But you got to look at it. Then the 2 plays later, when CeeDee Lamb caught the touch, a couple plays later, CeeDee Lamb caught a touchdown pass. So it was a perfect throw. CeeDee Lamb had a break
Yeah,
front.
and Galladay dropped the one, so it's like, oh, hey,
Yeah.
like if he would have caught that one, yeah.
So I have the Giants at 25. It feels high for them, but I'll leave them at 25 right now.
I got you. Yeah, so kicking it over my way, I've got Detroit at 21. I dropped them down 1 spot. I think these guys are still playing very tough football. They talk, oh, hard knocks, grit, all this, all that, whatever. The problem is they're not closing out games. And, some of that I think was DeAndre Swift getting hurt. some of that Amon-Ra St. Brown getting hurt towards the end of that game, it hindered them. And they had, some guys out on the offensive line too. Like good teams can close out games by running the ball effectively. The Lions have been able to run the ball effectively, but injuries kind of caught them at the wrong time. And then, some of the focus goes to Dan Campbell with the play calling. It's okay. I just hope that they don't lose motivation uh, if they continue to stack up losses because they are playing really good football. And overall, as a Lions fan, I'm happy with where they're at in year two of a major rebuild. And so, yeah, we want to see the wins, but I'm being patient. At 22, I've got the Raiders. I dropped them down 3 spots. Yeah, I mean, like I said, a lot of hype coming into the year. They have underperformed. And, I don't want to pick on them too much because I do think it was a tough slate to start the year. But for all the hype, they should be doing more than this. And then at 23, I've got the Washington Commanders. I dropped them down 2 spots, the commies.
Hmm.
Yeah, the big thing there for me is that offensive line just can't protect Wentz. We've seen it a couple weeks in a row now, and whether he's the right quarterback for them or not, if they can't protect the quarterback, it is never even going to matter.
Well, yeah, and
Uh,
you have Titanic Ron as a coach.
yeah,
That's a play on
Riverboat
Riverboat
Ron,
Ron. Yeah,
Riverboat Ron,
Titanic
yeah,
Ron.
Titanic
Because it's just
Ron.
he,
It's just
because
going down.
yeah, he may gamble, but his gambling are to the detriment of his gambling is to the
It's
detriment of
taking
the
him down.
team.
Yeah, it's all right. I like Ron Rivera, but they got to win. And then at 24, I got Carolina. I moved them up 3 spots. I thought 3 was a healthy bump for them, considering that, you know, I don't really know that they won the game so much as New Orleans just gave it away. And they had that like fluke touchdown pass to Laviska Shenault that, I mean, without that, maybe New Orleans wins that game. And it
Hmm.
just, I don't know. I don't have any faith in Carolina. And so they got the win. That's cool. I gave them a bump, but I'm not reading too much into it.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I we talked about it last week when we did our picks that Winston seems to struggle against Carolina for some reason.
Yeah, it's weird. Divisional thing. I don't know. But then at 25, I've got Pittsburgh. I dropped them down 1 spot. Like I mentioned earlier, it was a closer game than the box score would say, but they still got a loss, and they still have an uphill battle with their injuries and the issues that they're facing. So, yep, back to you at 26, man.
26, I have the Patriots. I would have dropped them, but this is kind of around them. It's not really that much I can put ahead of them. But if you look at the teams I have behind them, 27, Carolina. Look, they won. Was it flukish? Probably. Is there like a mental block with Winston in Carolina? Probably. They
Some
moved up
voodoo.
three. They moved up 3 spots. I mean, mainly because the teams ahead of them lost. Uh, 28, I have Pittsburgh. Dropped them down 1 spot. Um, I'm wondering. I was really high and thought good things, possibilities for Trubisky this year, and I'm wondering when they pulled the trigger for and put Pickens in. I'm seriously wondering that.
Yeah,
Um, not Pickens.
Kenny Pickett.
Pickett. Pickens is a wide receiver.
Yes.
Pickett.
Yeah, Pickens is looking good so far.
Yeah. 29, Atlanta. Dropped them 1 spot. The only reason I dropped them 1 spot, I mean, Atlanta's bad. Atlanta's bad. They
Oh,
beat
you
Seattle, who
dropped him off a win?
the win was against Seattle for
All
God's sakes.
right, all
And
right.
it was barely a win. What was it like
Yeah, it was
by
like, I don't know, 27-24 or something.
yeah, it was
I should have wrote the score down.
I could tell you real quick. I just gotta unhide. Uh Atlanta at 27-23.
Okay, that was close.
Yeah. So I mean, whatever. They beat Seattle, my 30 team. Seattle sucks. Seattle's lucky they're not 31 or 32.
Yeah, I'm with you. So I've got New England at 26 also. I dropped them down 3 spots. I do want to point out that they did hang in there in that game for sure for the first half and even into the third quarter until finally it started to slip away. But I still just I can't back a team that has Matt Patricia,
Yeah,
and so
can we have a fucking offensive mind as the offensive coordinator?
exactly. And honestly, James, maybe this sounds a little foolish or whatever coming from me because I'm just a average Joe nobody in the football world. But I feel like saying shame on you, Bill Belichick, that you're even doing this. It's like, holy cow. Like, what kind of messed up experiment are you trying to run here? It's not working. And you've had, you know, he could call anybody and be like, hey, I want you to be my offensive coordinator. And they are going to come and they are going to do a great job. But it's like, instead, he's just hodgepodging some shit bags together. And it's just fucking
The,
stupid.
and the offense doesn't make sense. They run, and I was hearing this, I forget the numbers, but they run 11 formation on offense so much. And
Yep.
it's one tight end, one running back. Um, and whatever number of wide receivers was that? That's 3, 10, 3 wide receivers, 5,
Yeah, I
8.
believe
Yeah.
3.
So, anyways, when their highest two paid receivers, quote unquote, are their two tight ends. So they
Yeah.
should be running 21, which is two tight ends, one running back, or 20 or whatever, because their talent is at tight end,
Yeah.
and to like half the plays, it was something like half the plays or more, they only have one tight end out there. It's bad play design because
And
Patricia doesn't know what the fuck he's doing.
they should at least be as good as they were last year
Uh-huh.
because this is year 2 with Mac Jones.
Mm.
Instead, they've gutted the playbook, thrown that fucker out, and they started over. And what they're moving to is not working at all, man. It's ugly. So then at 27, I've got Atlanta. I moved them up 4 spots. I was happy to see them get that win, James, and I was happy to bump them because offensively, they've been showing signs of life every week this year, and that's been exciting me. It's just that on defense, they haven't really shown those signs of life, and so I like giving them a bump. Um, and I hope Atlanta keeps winning, and I hope they keep doing stuff. I like the guys they got on that team, and with Mariota at quarterback, man, it's working out offensively a lot better than I was expecting it to, and it's actually fun to watch some of their offensive drives, man. And then at 28, I got Seattle. I moved them down 3 spots. We knew their defense could be problematic this year. The concern is how streaky their offense is. They have talent, especially at wide receiver. We've talked about that every week, and they're just not
But
making
that's
the
the
most
only
of it.
spot they have talent is wide receiver.
And, I'm just going to go on a small little tangent here, James, but my opinion, if you're the architect of a team and your strength is not just with one wide receiver, but two, and you don't have the offensive line and you don't have the quarterback, sorry, whether you like it or not, you need to trade those motherfuckers for other resources because you are in a rebuild. So, but they hung on to them,
Yes.
and now they're wasting away, and that bothers me, James. So yeah, at 29, I've got the Giants. I moved them down 3 spots. Oh, I hate seeing talent waste away. Uh, but yeah, hey, like you said, I thought the Giants played really well in that game, and they didn't win it, but that's okay. Dallas's defense was like lights out, and I like what I'm seeing out of the Giants. I just am concerned. Uh, I do believe their talent is lacking big time on both sides of the ball. And so it's a little bit deceiving that they're 2-1, but it's okay. I like their coach. I like what I'm seeing out of him and everything like that. And so, we'll give him some time. And then at 30, I got the Jets. I moved them down one. The real Joe Flacco showed back up. It was a bummer because obviously I picked them to win, which I knew was a little crazy. But, we'll talk about that in the picks tonight because the model has been changed. And part of it is to reflect things like this. When they stick out, you got to address them. And I will say this. I was expecting the Jets' defensive line to get a lot more pressure than they did,
Hmm.
and that was a big factor in this game. The Bengals have had a problem protecting Burrow all year, and then somehow in this game they were able to defend pretty well against the Jets' defensive line, which going into this game had actually been pretty strong. And so,
Hmm.
a little bit of a bummer there, but hey, whatever. That's just a bet for a bottle of whiskey, and we got a long season to go here, James. So back to you, man. Give me your dumpster fire.
All right. So probably all season, 31 and 32 is going to be in some order Chicago and New York. Chicago won, New York lost. So I moved Chicago from the bottom to 31, and I moved the Jets from 31 to 32. There's not much to say about this team. Justin Fields um, is not, his development is not there. Um,
No, but they haven't given him any freaking. They're not even giving him a chance, man.
right, but his lack of development is hindering Darnell Mooney's development.
Okay, first of all, Mooney is not a wide receiver one. Okay, so they're asking Fields to operate without a true wide receiver one. And then they're asking him to operate with a fucking shitbag offensive line. Sorry to all those guys. They're all pro athletes, and they're trying their hardest. And I don't want to like knock them like that. But when you go and you get a quarterback in the first round like that, James, you got to protect the guy, and they just haven't done it. I mean, we've talked a lot about Chicago has just dumped all their talent off of that team, and I think yeah, it sucks for Fields. It also does suck for Mooney, and I'm glad you pointed that out because I think he is a rising star. I just don't think he's a wide receiver one, at least not right now.
All right, so I'm just going to read what Jeff Kerr wrote on CBSSports.com for about this situation.
Sure.
Mooney might as well have his face on a milk carton at this rate
Oh no.
because he's disappeared through 3 games. He has he has he had 2 catches for 23 yards on Sunday, which is his season high. He has 4 total catches this season for 27 yards. Um,
Yeah. I'm not putting it on Fields
yes,
though.
do the math.
I mean, all I would say is, yeah, keep going, keep going.
So he's no longer the downfield threat that he was in his first 2 seasons, and I think that falls on the coaching staff. And I mean,
Yeah,
you count the Bears are attempting 45 passes. I'm sorry,
yeah,
I
45
thought that was
passes all year.
all year they've
Yeah,
attempted 45 passes.
yeah, they're averaging 15 a game. That
Yeah,
shows you how much faith they have in Justin Fields, which is basically none. But it's also they haven't put him in a position to succeed, so you can't have him back there throwing the ball 30 times a game. The dude will get killed.
exactly. That's just all I wanted to say about
Yeah, I,
Chicago.
I just, I don't think we can fairly evaluate Fields. That's all I'm saying because they haven't done him any favors. If anything, they're just trying to see how much can the guy persevere with a dog shit team around him, and that just sucks. That's like
Yeah.
really demotivating. Um, yeah. So in my dumpster fire, I got Chicago at 31 as well. And James, my note for them is that I think that this is probably the worst 2-1 team of all time. I'm just gonna
Yeah, but
say it.
that's the fucked up thing. We were saying the same thing last year about them. They were the
Was it?
worst
Yeah, when they
4-0
started like
team.
5-1 or some shit.
Yeah, they're the worst team.
Yeah.
They're like the worst team in the NFL, but somehow they get lucky and have monsoons where Trey Lance. Oh yeah, Trey Lance can't dance, so Chicago
Trey
wins.
Lance can't dance. Oh shit. Yeah, all right. So then yeah, I got Houston at 32 and it really bums me out to put them here. I dropped them down 2 spots. It's just tough. They're 0 and 3. I mean, I'm sorry, 0-2 and 0-2 and 1. Uh I need to see them get some wins and this past week, it sort of just sealed them going down to the bottom for the fact that they don't have any wins yet, and that they had a lot of mistakes in that game. I hate saying it, but Damian Pierce fumbled the ball. There was just a lot going on there that worked against them. And, it's a young team. I like their core. I think they're going to get better. I just want to see it, and then I'll take them out of the dumpster fire. So, all right, man. That's the power rankings. Let's move it on and do our week 4 game picks. And so, James, just to start us off here, year to date, you have got 25 wins, which is good for 52%. I have got 26 wins, which is good for 54%. I believe that's a 1 game gain that you got on me from the previous week. And hey, it's anybody's prize here to win. We've got a lot of football to go, and we've got a tight little spread so far. So why don't you kick us off here, James? We've got our Thursday night football game tomorrow. We've got it's the Dolphins at the Bengals. Who do you like there, man?
So my y- this week we probably have the most action that we've had in a long time, which is odd. And last week your model had like 17 close games out, and my model this week has 12 of the 16 games as within one score.
Yeah, so it was 7 last week, James, not 17. But
Oh, sorry.
yeah, no, you had the
12,
7 part right.
12 of the 16. I was being facetious because there wasn't 17 games last week. 12 of the 16, and 6 of those 12 are within 4 points, which is crazy how close it is. And some of this is subject to change as I adapt to injuries and that. But the first game, Miami, Cincy, I really could see Cincy winning the game. I kind of like what I saw, but Miami's on a tear, and
Yeah.
if they're say as long as Tua is playing, I could see this as a close game. It depends on a few things. And my model actually scored it as a 24-23 game,
Okay.
and with Miami winning.
Oh man, that's yeah, that score is interesting because yeah, I tweaked my model, James, and so I reduced the factor for home field advantage. And as I was telling you uh, over these last couple of days on Messenger, I've been reading a lot of articles talking about, historically the bookies would like build in about a 3-point factor for the home team. But there are a lot of different models out there now that are suggesting it's lower than that, and that some people are saying it's 1.5 to 2.5, but that you also have to look at the quality of the teams playing each other, and that if you have, you know, 2 good teams playing each other, it basically doesn't matter. Or if you have a good team playing a bad team, it basically doesn't matter. That it like really only comes down to it is relevant when you got 2 shitty teams playing each other, then it can still be a factor. But it's tough. It's tough to unpack it because a lot of the arguments they they're different depending on the article that you're reading. And so either way, I dumbed down my home field advantage factor a decent a bit. I mean, I cut it in half basically. And it came out with a slate of games that I would have probably picked off the top of my head. And so it's like, okay, I guess I'll run with that. And in this one, it's got Miami getting it by less than a point. And
Mhm.
so you having the game by 1 point tells me, hey, at least we're kind of thinking the same way for this game. And when I look at this one, I see, you know, it's like the Cincinnati offensive line is still at a disadvantage when you look at the trenches with the Miami defensive line and their linebackers. The Miami wide receivers and tight end group is actually going to have a pretty tough matchup because Cincinnati's secondary is really good. I think a lot better than people give them credit for. But yeah, I mean, I see this being a tight game, dude. I think this is going to be a really good one. I'm excited that we're kicking off the week with this matchup, man.
Mhm. And I'm going to correct something. Because one of my model scores, I overrode the results, so it's actually 13 within a touchdown, not 12.
All righty. I'll see
Um,
if I can tally mine up while we're talking here. But
so
yeah,
so
why don't you take us on?
Minnesota at New Orleans. So this one is is severely subject to change, especially as I get more information on Winston's availability and if Dalton's starting. If Dalton's starting, I could see this easily changing in my model because I do not have a high rating on Dalton at all.
Yeah.
Um, I it's at New Orleans, and this might be a home field factor a little bit too high, like you had mentioned in your model, because yours that's probably the big difference in our models because I have it as like a 3 point win by New Orleans. I just I'm gonna have to sit down and look at this further, but for now I haven't had time to actually delve into it too much. So I'm gonna go with the Saints.
Okay. Yeah, and so James, I was just scrolling through my summary here, and I've got 6 games this week within 3 points. And so last week it was 7 within 3 points. And so I got a lot of tight matchups again this week. But yeah, in this one in particular, I'm going to go with the Vikings. The models taking them off of my, revised home field advantage factor. If I would have kept the home field advantage factor where it was at last week, it would actually pick the Saints. But I'm going with the revised model. I think the Vikings are, you know, I just think they're a little bit more consistent and reliable than what we've seen out of the Saints so far this year. And so, on paper, in a lot of ways, I think the Saints are more talented, but Minnesota is performing better, even though they've had some disappointments already this year. And so, I'm going to stick with the Vikings for my pick here, man.
Okay. Next we have Cleveland at Atlanta. I was actually surprised how close my model picked this game. On paper, you would think that Cleveland would be far and above better or so much better than Atlanta. Um, but I think it might be taken too much into account the potential Miles Garrett injury or missing the game. But I have Cleveland winning the game 27-21,
Okay.
which seems really, really fucking close, but I'll go with it.
27-21. So you got a 6 point spread on this game. Oh man, you're killing me, James. Mine is my model is showing 5.4. So we're like you said last week, our models have been converging, which is all right. I've got Cleveland winning this one also, and it's hard to say because Atlanta has been so alive on offense. that I feel like it could be a very unpredictable game. But like when I look at my heat map, it's green almost all the way down for Cleveland, and they've got a big advantage in the trenches both ways, and that's like usually the first thing I look at when I'm going to pick a game. And pretty much just on that alone, I feel good about Cleveland getting the win here, man. All right, so let's take it on to our next game. We've got Buffalo at Baltimore. Who do you like there, man?
Again, another fucking close game. Uh, I do have some concerns with Baltimore and the injuries on defense. Also can't believe Lamar what keeps up with what's going on, and I think Buffalo bounces back. I think Buffalo plays this game super pissed off because Dorsey is chewing them out all fucking week
Oh yeah,
for this past week, and my model has it at 27-23 Buffalo.
27 to 23 Buffalo. Okay, so you got 4 points, and I'm just going to keep doing this as we go here because I've got uh, 4.07 is my spread for this game, and I've got Baltimore winning. Uh, this one's interesting to me because my heat map actually favors Buffalo. Um, and so it's interesting that basically the algorithm that I'm using is coming out with Baltimore because Buffalo definitely has more green. I think it's like I'm just trying to find out one of the significant differences here that's maybe putting Baltimore over the edge. I think honestly, I think that this is just even though I dulled down that home field advantage, that's what's tipping it in the scale. Even though I've only got like a little bit of it built in, it's just enough to give Baltimore the edge in the model.
Wow, I could see that. I
I mean,
that
honestly,
makes a
otherwise, I don't
lot
even
of
know
sense.
where I would call out a major advantage. Yeah, I mean, it's you got some injuries in Buffalo. I guess that's probably it.
Yeah. So next we have Washington at Dallas. And it's interesting. I talked about how I have 13 um, super close within touchdown games. The three that I don't have within touchdown, this happens to be one of them, are 12 and 13 points. This one happens to be 12 points, um, severely favoring Dallas, which is crazy, seeing as though they don't have their starting quarterback. But that's how far I think Washington has fallen,
Yeah.
and it makes sense that it's a 31-19 is what my model came up with.
Okay. Yeah, and so for this one, I've got a 8.62 spread, and I've got Dallas winning. I'm riding that Cooper Rush train, dude. That's just the way it's going to go for a while. Um, and yeah, I mean, when I'm looking at my analysis of this matchup, um, I think Washington's defensive line has a little bit of an edge over the Dallas offensive line. But when I look at it the other way, I think the Dallas pass rush has a huge advantage over the Washington offensive line. And that's going to be a big factor in this game. I mean, we watched Dallas's just getting to the quarterback all year, and Washington hasn't been able to protect the quarterback. So I fear for Carson Wentz in this game just a little bit, being honest.
I fear for him in every game, but that's another story. All right. So next up we have Seattle at Detroit. This is the one in my model. I'd mentioned to you that I overrode one game on my model, and
Okay.
this was it because it didn't fucking make sense. My model came out with Seattle winning 33 to 26.
Oh man, I don't like hearing that.
And I I think there's something wrong in my model that's lowering the Lions, and that might be it might be coaching factor, it might be how they're playing, it might be I don't know, but I could there's no way Seattle is such a bad team. I
Yeah.
if the Lions lose to Seattle, they might end up number 32 next week in my power ranking.
Well, don't say that, but well, I'm glad you overrode the model. My model has Detroit winning this game, and it's got it by a spread of 5.34. Uh, it has a big favor for Detroit on the offensive line going up against that Seattle pass rush. And so I think that that's going to help Detroit move the ball with ease to some degree. And conversely, when we look at Seattle, I think that the tricky part is like we talked about. They have a lot of talent at wide receiver, and on paper, they should be able to exploit the Detroit secondary. But Geno Smith has got to be able to capitalize that, and I don't know that he can, at least not consistently. And so I like Detroit having the edge here. I'm sticking with them, and like I said, I'm glad that you're overriding your model here, James.
All right. Next up, we have the Chargers at Houston. And this was a fucking crazy one. And I think what it boils down to is all the injuries piling up for the Chargers. But my
Yeah.
model actually came up with Houston winning the game 30 to 24 and getting their first win of the season against the Chargers. And I'm sticking with it because I'm super concerned about the Chargers with all the injuries piling up, and I think that with all the mistakes that happened this past week with Houston, there'll be a greater focus on eliminating those mistakes.
Okay, so as we were talking here, I just made the update with Bosa being out, and I still have the Chargers winning by 4. And the model should have all of the injuries built into it at this point, and I've discounted Herbert, expecting him to play, but playing injured. In the heat map is all green for the Chargers, which is it's kind of blowing me away a little bit. Um, I'm just going to stick with that. I don't really need to dig any deeper. We know Houston is a bottom tier team with potential. They just got to develop. And we know the Chargers are a top tier team just fighting the injury bug. And so I think they'll get the win despite all that.
Next up, we have Tennessee at Indy, and we talk about I think Indy might have figured something out, and there's a possibility they might have figured something out against Kansas City. Um, I don't know. I I don't on paper when I look at it, the way they've been playing with just qualitatively, not quantitatively, I would think Tennessee would win the game. When I run my model, I have a 27-21 victory by Indy, and I
Okay.
couldn't really find that much to pick apart in that. So I'm gonna go with Indy.
Yeah, it's tough for me. So I've got Indy winning by 7, and I don't trust it by any means because I don't trust either of these teams right now. When I look at it on paper, Indy in the trenches should dominate both ways. Their offensive line should be a lot stronger than Tennessee's defensive line, and the other way, their defensive line should be a lot stronger, like way stronger than Tennessee's offensive line. The problem is neither of these teams have really been playing to their ratings like that, and so um, it makes it very hard to tell. But I'm going to stick with Indy because 7 points. I've not done the override on my model yet this year. I just tweaked the factors for this week. And I tried telling you, I'm going to wait to get through this week before I start overriding. But in the future, I don't even know if this is a game I could override because I think both of these teams are wild cards at this point. But yeah, I don't know, man. The more I talk about it, the more I think I'm confusing myself. I'm sticking with Indy, and we're moving on.
All right, Chicago at the Giants, and this is an indication of how much there's something right in Chicago because they're after this week they're going to be the worst 3-1 team we've ever seen.
Oh,
Um,
jeez.
I have them 19-14, and I just think I'm trying to stick with my model as much as I can, unless there's something really glaring on it.
Yeah.
And this one didn't have much, much sticking out to me.
Okay. Um, so for me, James, I've got the Giants winning this one, and it's by less than a point. I've got this one really, really freaking close. Um, I think a lot of this is going to come down to what version of Saquon Barkley are we going to get? Because he came out with a bang in week one,
Hmm.
basically disappeared in week two, and then in week three, uh, you know, I think a lot of people say he did good, but it's really because he had one big play. And other than that, he was pretty much stifled that entire game. So, but when I look at my heat map, that's really the big difference maker. And so I'll stick with it, and I'll take the Giants, man.
So next up we have Jacksonville at Philly, and I said 12-13. I was wrong. This one I have as a 9-point victory by Philly. I think that kind of shows how how good Jacksonville's been playing this year, and that's why I think it's so close because I think Philly has pretty much every game has been a double digit favorite since I started this model.
Okay.
So I'm with Philly.
Yeah, so I'm taking Philly as well, and I've got them winning by 10 points. I would say that even though the model's got them at 10, with the way Jacksonville's playing, I could at least see them making it a closer game than that. And I haven't checked what the line is on that game, but I like Philly. I think that this is one of those ones. I don't know if I would necessarily call it a trap game, but you do got to watch out because Doug Peterson does still know that team
Hmm.
pretty intimately. And so even though I think the consensus is that Philly's going to take this, this could be a little bit of a trap game. And
I'm showing the line at 6.5.
yeah, see, that's not a bad line. I think my model at 10's a little bit aggressive, but either way, I still like Philly to win this one. And I keep coming back to the trenches, James. Philly, they are better both ways in this matchup. And so even if Jacksonville keeps it tight, I think Philly comes out on top.
Next, we have the Jets at the Steelers, and I think this is my model. This is another one of my close games. I have this as a 5-point spread, 21-16. I think this kind of shows how far Pittsburgh is down this year because I
Yeah.
think the Jets are are atrocious, and I think they should not be playing American football. I think probably soccer is a better choice for them, but that's neither here nor there. I have Pittsburgh winning the game by 5.
Okay. So yeah, I've got a 6-point spread on this game. I've also got Pittsburgh winning it. Um, like the big difference that I show in this game, looking at the heat map, is that there's a lot of favor towards Pittsburgh's secondary. And so Zach Wilson looks like he's going to be coming back to play this game. I think this is a tough matchup for him, trying to air it out against what's a pretty good secondary. Um, you know, if Pittsburgh gets pressure on him, it could be a disaster for the Jets. But Pittsburgh is in disarray themselves, and so I think it's a little bit of an unpredictable game, but I'm going Pittsburgh.
All right, next we have Arizona at Carolina. And this is a fucking crazy score for my model. I don't know how the fuck this happened. And I like the aggressiveness of it, so I'm going to stick with it. Um,
Okay.
my model has Carolina winning the game by 12 points.
What? Dude, that's
Yes.
crazy.
So there's something I I think there's probably some I like the aggressiveness of it, so I'm going to leave it for now. Um,
Sure.
I have to dig into it a little further because there's something there that there's no way Carolina is 12 points better than Arizona.
I mean,
No
hey,
fucking way.
yeah, I mean, any given Sunday, anything can happen. You never know. But yeah, that would be a pretty wild outcome. So I mean, I take it you're taking Carolina because
I'm
it's
going to
just
stick with Carolina for
yeah, because you're
now.
just picking the winner. You don't have to pick the spread. That's such a big spread. See, now it's interesting for me because in my model, I got this game by less than a point, and I've got Arizona winning. And I was shocked to see it that close. I thought, geez, man, like, is Arizona really fallen off the map that much? And I guess to some degree they are. You know, I still have faith in Kyler Murray because, like we saw the other week, he can just totally light it up, and you just never know. And so, um, looking at the rest of the analysis here, I still, I know I say this every week. I like the Arizona secondary. I think that's going to make it hard for Baker Mayfield. I think that with Christian McCaffrey, he's not been a workhorse back this year, and that's a problem. Carolina needs to turn the dial up on his
Mhm.
usage, and I know you're worried about him getting hurt, but man, he can be a difference maker for that team if you use him, and they're not really using him. And so I'm going to stick with Arizona, even though I think it's going to be tight. And I wouldn't be surprised if Carolina gets it, man. I mean, shit, I'm less than a point, but it's good. We got a little bit of action. I mean, shit, we got a lot of action this week,
Next up
but
we have yeah. Next up we have New England at Green Bay. And I think ultimately, once we find out more about Mac Jones' injury and what's going on there, I think this the spread in my model will increase. Right now, my model has as a 7 point victory by Green Bay, which I'm surprised is that close. But I don't think my model's taken into account Hoyer starting
okay.
because if but the Hoyer, and this was the point I wanted to make earlier, and I forgot about it to now. What do you think, Brent? What do you think Hoyer's record in his last 11 starts in the NFL is?
I wouldn't even want to guess, James. I didn't even know
Oh,
he got to 11 starts.
0-11.
Uh, uh,
No, I'm with Green Bay. Don't think there's I don't think there's any way, even if my model, even if like half Green Bay's team gets injured, I don't think I'm going to switch off Green Bay on this game.
yeah, and I mean, Green Bay, they're going off the Patriots to play in the Giants at home and then the Jets at home. And so, I mean, they could hypothetically just put this game on autopilot, knowing that they basically got the next two in the bag. That is like the only way I could see New England getting a win here. I'm taking Green Bay. My model has Green Bay winning by 14, which, it's a big number, and Green Bay's offense hasn't been firing on all cylinders in every game. So I don't know that they'll necessarily win by 14, but they should have no problem putting this game away.
Next up, we have the Broncos at the Raiders. My model has this as a 2 point victory. I think it's kind of indicative of how pathetic the Broncos looked on, was it Sunday night, and how pathetic the Raiders have looked all year. I have the Raiders winning 23-21.
Okay. So, looking at my stuff here, I've got the Raiders winning, and this is another game I've got it really tight by less than a point. And in fact, let me just tweak something real quick because I want to see if I change one of my factors, how much does it mess it up? I mean, I could see this. Let's just undo that. But yeah, so either way, um, I've got the Raiders winning it. I don't feel confident by any means because both of these teams have just been freaking garbage this year. I think I put my faith in Russell Wilson, even though his head coach is doing everything he can to like just wreck his career or something. I don't know. The heat map favors the Raiders a little bit. Um, yeah, I think I'm confusing what I'm saying here. I would personally prefer Russell Wilson and think he's better or whatever else, but the model's taking the Raiders by one, and so I'm going to go with the Raiders. I think the Raiders, it's deceiving in the model because I have a catch factor which looks at their wide receivers, and it really has a huge advantage over the Denver secondary. But a lot of that is because fucking Devontae Adams has a fucking 99 rating. It like I think artificially inflates the collective rating for that Raiders catch group, if you want to call it that. But still, um, I think the Raiders they're going to get pressure on Russ. They have an advantage on the defensive line, and they're going to force him out of the pocket. And if he doesn't get out of the pocket like they've been trying to keep him in the pocket, it's going to be a disaster. So I'll stick with the Raiders.
This game could change. The next game could change in my modeling because of the home field factor versus because it might be moved to Minnesota. It's Kansas City at Tampa Bay. I'm kind of surprised about this in my model, but it has Tampa Bay winning by 3 points. Um, I think it's really because both teams offensively have looked anemic, but I think it, even though Mahomes looks like a phenomenal quarterback, I think my model is giving a slight edge to Tom Brady because it's Tom freaking Brady,
Yeah,
and that's where I went with. But it's subject to change because depending on what happens with moving the game and the whole hurricane situation.
I got you. So I've got Kansas City winning by 3 in this one. And yeah, I think the stadium change could be a factor. Um, it's tough. Like when I look at the model, um, I put a lot of the favor in Kansas City's coaching, and I don't mean to put Todd Bowles down like that. I think he's a great defensive coordinator. As a head coach, I think there's something to be desired. But I did like his week one strategy, running the ball hard, playing good defense. It's just that in a game against Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, he's really going to need Tom Brady to be bringing his A game, and I'm not sure that that's there right now. And so I'm going Kansas City.
Uh, Monday night we have the Rams at San Francisco, and first glance everyone's going to say, "Oh, the Rams win," but you got to remember Shanahan always plays the Rams tough. I don't have the record Shanahan's record against the Rams offhand. I forgot to look it up today, but it Shanahan always plays the Rams tough and generally beats the Rams generally. Um, I, I have San Francisco winning 21-17, and I tried to pick it apart a little bit as I had time, and I couldn't pick it apart, so I'm sticking with San Francisco.
Okay, I got you. So I'm going the other way. I got the Rams. I've got them winning by two. Um, this is another one of these weird matchups where both of these teams just have been so inconsistent and just more bad than they've been good that I just don't get a good feeling either way out of this game. I think that heat map wise, you would argue that the Rams, it's really not even the Rams, both defensive lines should dominate the other team's offensive
Hmm.
line. And it's a matter of which quarterback is going to respond to that better. I think I would trust Stafford a little more than Jimmy G. Um, but it's anyone's guess. And then I do like the Rams defense in general a little bit better in the secondary. Although I will say the 49ers secondary has been surprisingly good so far this year. But either way, I'll take the Rams. I'm good with the model having them win it by two.
Last but not least, we have next Thursday, the Colts at the Broncos. And I didn't run this through my model. I like to have the previous week's information before I run it through my model because I don't want to skew much. So I like for Thursday night the previous week and then like on like Tuesday, Wednesday, like to run it through my model. I like to just go with my first instinct on the game. And looking at the two teams, I think Denver's fallen off, and I think Indy might be on the incline. So I'm gonna go with Indy on it.
Gotcha. Yeah, and so I am I'm going with Indy, but I gotta just say we're a little bit far out yet for me to really adjust my model properly because these teams have so much going on that I think that what we see after this weekend has the potential to flip the model. And so, like my initial scan of the model, the heat map has it in favor of Indy, but like the actual outcome, which I think to some degree comes back to that home field advantage factor, even though I dumbed it down, is just barely shifting it into Denver's favor. But if I had to guess, after I make my adjustments this week, it'll have Indy, and so I'm gonna pick Indy for now. And if that changes by next week, James, I'll keep you posted, man.
All right, sounds good.
All right. Well, those are the game picks. And so, yeah, for anybody who's watching, don't go and bet the house on these picks because, I mean, shit, we're only at 52 and 54%. So, but hey, we've had better days. We've been as high as two-thirds, and there's still a lot of season to go. We're going to massage these models, and, we'll get there, man. We just got to give it time. And so, James, let's move it on over. Let's do our question of the week. We talked a little bit about it earlier. I'm just going to come back around to it. With all of the injuries that the Chargers are facing, do you still think that they can make the playoffs this year? Or I guess, not do you think they can still make it? Do you think they will make it? Yes or no, and why? I'm going to say no. I think that, despite this being one of the teams I was most excited about coming into the year, I think these injuries are just too much at this point, and I think a lot of it is, Slater being out is going to affect that offensive line. Lindsley's been banged up. Uh, Herbert is hurt. It's like, man, you can play hurt if you got some damn good protection. Now you're playing hurt with suspect protection. That's a recipe for a more serious injury. Bosa's they're saying out for a month. I mean, it's just you can do everything in your power to put an amazing team on paper, but if you can't stay healthy, the stars will not align, and it means basically nothing. And so I'm bummed out to say it, but I don't think that they're going to make the playoffs. Maybe Herbert gets healthy and throws the team on his shoulders. I think he's more than capable of doing that. I'm just worried that they're not going to be able to protect him enough, and so I'm saying that they're out. I'm saying that this is We're going into week 4 and it's already over for these guys, man.
I'm going to agree with you. Before the Slater injury, like if you take that out, I think they could because like Bosa's going to be out for a month, but so let's call that 4 weeks. Call it 5 weeks because the bye week's in there. They got Houston, Cleveland, Denver, Seattle, and then the bye. They come back from the bye and they play Atlanta. So those are survivable games with because and these players could get healthy for San Francisco, Kansas City, Arizona. Like the meat of their schedule is towards the end.
Gotcha.
But with this, like you said, with the suspect protection, um, can will they make the playoffs? I don't think so because now that they have the suspect protection, they lost their starting left tackle. I think that's I mean we talk about it all the time, the trenches, the trenches, the trenches.
Yeah.
If they have the protection, maybe Herbert can survive and get healthy playing through the injury. Without the protection, he can't because he's just going to get hit over and over again. And so my answer is no.
Okay. Well, we're in alignment. It's a brutal sport. Oh man, it sucks. It sucks. I was so pumped up for that team, but hey, that's the reality. Sometimes it just works out that way. And so, yeah, for anybody who's watching, we hope that you hit us up and answer our question of the week, much like we want you to play Name That Stadium. Just find us on YouTube, hit us up in the comments section, let us know what you think. We will respond. I can promise you that, unless you say some very harsh negative things about us. Even then, we'll probably still
Well,
respond
we still
because
might respond that way.
yeah, it just might be a different kind of response. We like to respond in kind, as they would say. But yeah, I mean, hey, listen, for anybody who's out there, we hope you like the show. This was definitely one of the longer ones, but that's why we do the chapters, help kind of bookmark it, let you jump around, and check us out again. We're going to be doing this stuff every week. It's the same agenda until we get to the playoffs, and so. Yeah, James, like always, man, it was a good time. I'll catch you later, homie.
Sounds good. Have a good one.
Gridiron Grinder. Hut hut hike.